building the business turns you into a different kind of human being.
Realize that failure is a part of the journey.
I think there's hope out there for all of us.
They say procrastination be the assassination of destinations. That's why we out here grinding with no association. With haters and them other crabs trying to put us down. Pest badges in the house, boy, don't clown. Just keep your eyes on the prize, ain't no giving up. You can do whatever you dream of. Just keep your eyes on the prize, ain't no giving up. You can do whatever you
Welcome back to the show, everyone. We had a really awesome guest. Really excited. I know Jim and I connected, it was like 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
I think it's like 2 weeks ago from a mutual friend. And it's like, hey, you need to reach out to this guy. I think it's to be a good connection. We jumped on the phone. It seemed like we were best friends right away. We talked for, I don't even know, hour and a half, 2 hours, just talking on the phone, just chatting, going back and forth about business. And I was like, hey, I'd really like to get in the podcast sometimes. Like, yeah, just whenever. So I just shot you a message. And last week we didn't really work out. You got sick. I got stuck traveling. I might as well tell you the story since I kind of left you hanging on a cliffhanger. But yeah, I was traveling back from North Carolina, doing a little gig out there, came back. And, or not North Carolina, I'm sorry, New York. And I was on my way back, and then my flight got canceled in Appleton, from Chicago to Appleton. So I was like, but before I went, I was like, I can either pick Detroit or I could pick Chicago. I'm like, if something happens, at least Chicago is like within 5 hours, I can jump in a car and drive home because my daughter had a wrestling meet that day. So I rented a car, and they're like, hey, will you do us a favor? And will you take this EV vehicle? I'm like, sure, not a big deal. But they're like, it'll get you 500 miles. I'm like, fair enough. My trip's like less than 300. And they're like, perfect. I get 200 miles in, and this thing dies. Like down to like, I don't know, 10%. And I'm like, okay, now what do I do? So I found like a charging station, plugged it in for 20 minutes, doesn't move a percent. I'm already late. Now I'm frustrated. And there's no Enterprise around. So I found another little town, like an hour north of me. Like I just shot straight there. On the way, I was calling all the rental places, found another rental company. Found another rental company, I left that rental car there, that rental truck there, got a new vehicle, raced 100 miles an hour to my daughter's wrestling meet. Walked in, she was like within 2 minutes walking on the mat. So I was a half hour late, but I still made it on time. And so the next morning, I had to drive back down there. And thankfully, the place that I rented it from had a charging station. So I plugged the truck in, went out for lunch or went out for breakfast for about 2 hours. It said it was at 144 miles of range. I'm like, cool. So my trip's only 55 miles. Not even joking. 10 miles down the road, it's already halfway gone. I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. So I stopped in Green Bay, grabbed another rental car, left that vehicle there at Enterprise, and drove that vehicle down to Appleton and got my truck back. So 3 vehicles later, I got my truck. And I made it to the meet. So it all worked out the way it was supposed to. But that's my story. That's what happened. I was like, yeah, it was a good experience. I'll say the one thing. The guy at Enterprise in Green Bay, can't remember the kid's name. I wish I took his card, was an absolute stud. The way he handled himself, and I was nice about it too. I just told him the situation. He was an absolute stud. I was like, no, it just didn't go well. You asked me what happened. And then he's like, anything less than a 3-star for us, because they only have to do 3 stars there, is considered a fail. So whatever I got to do to make you happy, I'm like, hey, I'm not even looking for money back. I just want to let you know the situation so it doesn't happen to the next person. And he's like, nope, I'm not leaving here with like this. And he credited me my money back or $100 off or something like that. But he took it really, really well. I wish I could have hired him on the spot, and I wish I would have thought about him. Like, he was that good. But anyway, so that's my story. That's what happened. Then you were sick, so we kind of just didn't connect, and I was running late. And so it all worked out, but here we are.
Maybe the best compliment I ever had came from a stranger. I was in downtown Sacramento, walking from the Department of Pesticide Regulation. And in California, we have our own EPA, which is as big as the EPA, the section of EPA that does structural pest control in DC. In fact, our California agency has a bigger budget. So it's, all they do is sit there and cause issues, in my opinion. But I've spent a better part of the last 25 years working as an advocate for the industry in California with DPR. And so I was leaving DPR, going downtown Sacramento to do some meetings in the Capitol, and it was raining. But, I had the tie on and all that other stuff was kind of looking good. come up to an intersection, and an elderly black gentleman walks up to me and he says, "Hey, can I join you in your parasol?" And I said, "Well, you can, of course, but because I'm a man, it's an umbrella." He said, "Oh, I'm sorry, your umbrella, Jim." I said, "Okay." So we walked and we talked for like 4 or 5 blocks, and this guy was, at that time, he was probably 20 years older than me. This was like 10 years ago. Just totally put together. Someone, who's walking with confidence and competence. And we just had a great time talking. And we hit his building. He says, "Okay, this is my stop here, and I'll see you later." He says, "Good luck with you and your umbrella." Kind of a funny little joke when he left. And I said, "Hey, I got a question for you real quick. At that intersection, all those people, what made you kind of come up to me and ask for the little walk?" And he turned around, and as he was walking away, without even looking back at me, he said, "Game knows game.
That's
See
awesome.
you later."
Yeah.
And I'm like, first of all, I'll never be as cool as that guy ever.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He was just totally cool to begin with. And I got to tell you, I've been feeding off that compliment for more than a decade.
I love that.
But doesn't it describe your experience there with that person?
Yeah.
And that's when you recognize the game, wherever you see it with other people, you just want to bring them into your game and have them working with you. But what a great experience. He kind of gave me a gift that day that, like I said, I've been feeding on that for a long time.
Yeah, I wrote that down. Game recognizes game. I always take notes every podcast. I think I have stacks of these notebooks of just all podcast notes. That's just what I do. So I wrote that down. But today we have Jim Steed, your owner, founder of Neighborly Pest Control, right? And you're out of Sacramento?
Not the founder.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. You have to tell the story. But CEO, go with that?
Yes. Owner, CEO.
Cool. I love that. So let's walk it back a little bit. I love how this started up. I'm going to take you back to, like, if you and I was asked the same question. You and I are juniors, senior in high school. Who is Jim in high school?
He's a guy who knows how to have fun and doesn't have hardly any discipline. He has so much fun that after high school, instead of going to college, he goes to work. And so I went to work for a year at a roll-up door factory from an Australian company called Gliderall Doors. And after that, I went on a 2-year mission to Houston.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a lot of LDS people in the pest business, I think.
There sure are, yeah.
After the door-to-door phenomena. But so when I came back from that, it really, you grow up an awful lot, in those 2 years. You're on your own, and you learn a lot of skills. And it kind of changed me from a child, and into more of an adult. And I came back and I had a lot of ambition, but not a lot of money. And university wasn't really an option for me. I knew I had to do community college. So started going to school at night, and I was just working landscape during the day. And I did that for a couple of years. And my mom was a volunteer at an employment agency. And this was in 1993. So I was about 23 by then, a couple of years back, going to night school. And she forgot her lunch on this rainy January day, calls me up and she says, "Hey, bring me my lunch. I forgot it." I'm like, "Oh, okay. You don't say no to mom." What I didn't realize is when I brought her the lunch, as I was leaving, I looked up on the board and there was this little 3x5 index card. So they had a job opening for a landscape sprayer. And I don't think I was supposed to take the card, but I took it. Well, it was an advertisement for a job with Neighborly Pest Management. So this company, Neighborly, was started in 1978 by a couple of guys who used to sell for Univar, Viserys, which it is now.
Yep.
Back then, it was Van Waters and Rogers. And they had built it up from 78 to 93. There were about 12 people working at Neighborly then. And they had decided they were going to conquer the lawn care industry. So they hired this guy who had a degree in soil agronomy and they needed a guy to do all the backpack spraying. And I got hired to be the assistant trainee sprayer for the emerging turf department, February 1st of 93. And I thought, spraying's better than hauling rolls of sod. Well, it took me a month or two in, and I'm looking at these guys, and they're talking about they're making production. And I started asking, what's production? What's that? Well, if you have a license, you can make a percentage. And I thought, oh, what have I found? What is this glorious place? When I work harder, I make more money. So I asked them about it, and they said, sure, if you get the license, we'll do that. So I went, I got my QAL license, which is the outdoor spray license here in California first. And away I went. I was here at 6 a.m. I worked till 6 p.m. I got all the work I could get, whether it was in the spray department or pest control. And I would work all day and go to school at night. And this worked out pretty well. Probably doubled my income just by having that opportunity. As life kind of moved on. It's a smaller company, so they have a problem with the office computers, and I could fix that. And they had a problem with this, and I fixed that in the office and did that. And after a couple years, the guy who hired me as the manager, he quit. So they went on a search for a successor, and they couldn't find anyone over about 2 months to take his job. So I walked in and said, hey, why don't you let me do the job? And they said, Jim, you don't have your degree. You're not really at that level. And I said, yeah, but none of my customers care about soil agronomy. Not one ever asked me about pH. They want to know if it's green. I'm the guy that makes them green. All they want to do is make a deal. And I'm better at selling than he was. And I said, and besides, if you don't like it, just fire me. No one else is doing the job. And so they said, okay, let's see what you can do. And it turned out that I just love to sell. I'm not sure what it is about somebody saying yes. It's not necessarily the money, because I get as happy with a small sale as a large one. Maybe I get a little happier with the big ones, but there's just something about that, that resonates in certain people. And it's like, that's what I want in my life every day. So the selling worked out really well. And then I started managing more, started managing the pest control to go with it. And then by 99, I had decided, look, I'm building this thing here. I think I can build my own. And I had a guy who was ready to loan me $50,000 for some equipment. And I came into the owners and I said, hey, I think I'm going to take off, but I want to thank you because, I've learned a lot here. And they said, well, would you stick around if we made a deal? And I said, ooh, what do you mean? What kind of a deal? Well, maybe a deal for ownership. And I said, okay, kind of took me by surprise, to tell you the truth. So long story short, the negotiations ended with a 7-year employment agreement that culminated in 2006 with an option to buy a percentage of the company at full market price, maybe above market price, but it was a steep price. So for 7 more years, I worked and I saved. Back then it was a lot. I had to save up $40,000. And if I had my down payment and I was still employed, they hadn't fired me, then I could exercise my option. So, I just went to work, and those two partners, starting in 2000, started to work on a modified schedule, because then I was pretty much running the whole company. So both of them came in Monday, and then one went home for the rest of the week, and neither of them ever worked Fridays. So from about the time they were, about 45 or so, neither of them had to work full time ever again. I mean, imagine having 6 months a year off. It was a really good arrangement for them.
Hold up, quick pause. If you're on a pest control company or fertilization weed control company, you're not in our Facebook group, you're choosing the harder path. Every operator that's in there is skipping years of mistakes because people are actually sharing what's working right now. So stop trying to brute force your way through growth alone. Search Pest Control Millionaires on Facebook or click the link below. And now let's get back to it. What was your title at this point?
General manager.
Gotcha.
General manager. And then I was an owner with a percentage. And then in 2009, I was able to increase that percentage to a third of the company. And then in 2013, I talked him into selling me the rest of it and became the owner of all of it. And, now over time, it took some time to pay them, but all those obligations are fulfilled. And so since 2013, bought in, we were doing about $1 million in pest back then and about $1 million in termite. And we're just about ready to hit 8 this year here. So it's been a good run.
That was a long time to wait. 7 years. Like I try to put myself in that position. I just don't know if I could do it.
I enjoyed where I was, and looking back on it, I think it was definitely a gamble that paid off.
Yeah, I agree.
Super, super well. I mean, super well. And I'm kind of glad. I love the brand. I love the name.
It's great.
Neighbor.
I agree.
I love the legacy I've got here. I've got 33 years, that I've worked in the same place. Not a lot of people have that in their life, be able to do that. So for me, it's been fulfilling in every way that I really wanted.
Yeah, that's cool. With those options, did they do owner finance for you too, or you could just start paying them? That's awesome.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, that's what laid really out the pattern for me.
Right.
Most of the growth I've had has been through acquisition.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Yep, working with smaller guys who were done and sitting down and saying, hey, let me figure out something that works for you. And we've had 6 or 7 of those. So a lot of our growth has come from that.
Yeah, it's great. And then I know that you're very involved, like you said, with the board out there. And I'm sure you meet a lot of guys through the board, through your networks out there.
Yeah, the associations, like my state association out here, it used to be called PCOC, and now it's called CAPMA, the California Association of Pest Management. Probably 90% of my networking has been through the trade association. And over the last 15 years, I've also become much more involved with NPMA. Last year, I was chair of public policy for NPMA, which, is kind of the biggest, most important committee that NPMA has. I was really shocked when they asked me to be a vice chair and then the next year the chair. But I've enjoyed a lot working with companies all over the nation on legislation and also regulation, California regulations.
I actually have that written down. It's one of my questions to ask about it.
I've done a lot of, I've probably done no less than 400 legislative visits.
Unreal.
Over my career. Yeah, with offices, assembly members and Senate, testified in front of committees more than a dozen times. And I can't tell you how many hours I've put in. Well, a lot of time in Sacramento at the state legislature, the Department of Pesticide Regulation. And we also have a structural pest control board here too, that is part of that.
Awesome. I have a couple of questions regarding that then. How much has the pest control industry changed since you started?
Quite a bit. In fact, I think one of the phenomenons now that's really pronounced is if you've got 30 years of experience in the pest industry, 20 of those years don't mean a thing. It has changed so much in the marketing and in the application and chemical technology that whatever you did that first 20 years isn't being done now. There are no more yellow pages. Sorry, you can't do lectures about those. And that's what we used to do. In California, we used to power spray all of our, and we don't really do that. All of our applications now crack and crevice with backpack sprayers for most of the companies that are out there.
With that part being said, what was it like? Because you had a lot of customers at that point. What was it like adopting from power spraying with a truck and a hose to transitioning to a backpack sprayer? As far as the customer's perspective, it was a lot of education.
No, it was way easier than I thought. And it turned out that only a few of our oldest customers really cared about how much we were spraying.
Yeah, I think the only reason I asked that is because I hear that question all the time.
Yeah, I was really surprised. I thought it was 2012 when things really started to change, especially with pyrethroids. And because of my involvement in DPR, I got recruited into doing the information videos on those. So if you're ever bored on YouTube, type in pyrethroid working group, and you'll see all these videos we made explaining the new regulations on how to make applications. And I think I got like 8,000 views on those now. That's my big claim to YouTube fame. But back then, I really thought, we're going to have to it might take a couple years to educate everybody. And it went over like a whimper. Like, I took a dozen phone calls. And once we explained to them, hey, your service guarantees are all the same. We're being a little more pinpoint about what we're putting down and where we're putting it down. And it's just better for everyone if we do it like this. People came along, no problem. And it could be that they're just Californians who are kind of trained to like their oatmeal,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think even just like the customer itself has changed a lot too. What do you think? Like I just like I think of like 15 years ago, you could probably get away with maybe call the customer back in a day or 2 or 3 days and having them wait for service a week or 2 weeks. I just feel like the game has evolved. Like you have to answer your phones all the time. You have to get service right away. If someone has a problem, like they're not willing to wait. Like if you decide you're gonna wait 2 weeks to answer a phone or call us back, it's long gone. Like the customer has changed so much.
Yeah, our number one core value is responsive. Number one. And yeah, and it's just like you would, if you told somebody 15 years ago, hey, you can get on your phone and dial up a stranger to give you a ride to where you're going, you'd think that's crazy. It's for perverts and serial killers.
Agreed. And if you jumped on your phone and said, hey, I need something shipped to my house, you should take 6 to 8 weeks to fulfill an order, and all of a sudden it's at your front doorstep, and within 4 hours, you'd be like, no, yeah. I just think the whole app, like the whole customer avatar has changed so much.
Yeah, and I, as a consumer, I've adapted with it too. So like now, I really appreciate maybe sometimes not talking to someone. There's sort of there's a happy zone, right?
Yeah.
I hate to call on the phone and hear a robot, because now I'm going to do these robot gymnastics. Press this for that. I'm trying to be AI and guess what you want. I'm going to guess wrong, but then I just want to talk to a person. But more than anything else, I just love to say, yes, I want pest control. Yes, I'm free Tuesday. Yes, that price is okay. I'm done.
Agreed. And I love it so much too. Like I'm kind of the same way. Like I'll call, like I'll need customer service, but I get the AI thing. And I just don't want to talk to the AI thing. And like, I don't want to talk to this. I just need a person. Then in the same tone, I'll call to pay a bill, and I get the AI person. It's super fast and takes 30 seconds. Gosh, I love that.
Exactly. And that's how we're changing, right? That whole experience is evolving. And so people who call you that are 35 years and younger are going to be already immersed in that type of an experience. That's what they like. That's what they expect. They're comfortable with it. They're almost more comfortable than the person-to-person stuff. 35 to 45, there's a mixture of it. 45 and up, they're coming along kind of begrudgingly. You get my age, 55 and up, and we're still talking about the Flintstones.
It's funny because last year we started adapting AI in our call center too, and you could tell like the people who would call in a little bit older, and it's all recorded, and they would just be screaming at the AI bot. It was so funny, just swearing at it. And then the younger people loved it, so you hit the nail on the head there. And I'm in that in between. I'm the 35 to 45, so I'm right in between. So like what I said makes perfect sense. You know, like I like it, and then I just dislike parts of it too. But I think that's going to change. I mean, it's constantly changed. The next 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, in a year, you're not even going to be able to tell.
Well, our industry operated, I would say, virtually the same for 40 years.
Yeah, I agree.
From 1970 to 2010, it was pretty much almost exactly the same business. And it by 2005, it was changing, but it hadn't changed yet. So everything that we learned in those 40 years is not necessarily applicable to how business is done today. And so you really see a lot of the older businesses, they're growing a lot slower. They're not adapting very quick. And businesses that are adapting and embracing technology are surging in popularity right past all of these legacy businesses that have had decades of an advantage. But technology is changing so quickly that it's leaving them behind it. And I've learned this. It's not like we've done one sort of technological leap. We've done like 3. And so whoever you have on your team, it better include a lot of young folks because it's almost a new language, right? Like 6, 7.
I see. On Friday was my daughter's 67th day of school. I heard that all day long.
Right. See, and for most folks, they'll be like, "What? Huh?" And you've got to have some of those folks around because those are where your customers are going to start to come from.
Yeah, I've said this in the podcast a million times. I said you always need 3. It's my personal opinion. You always need 3 mentors. You need one who's been there and done it, who can save you a bunch of time. You need a person who's roughly the same size, so you guys can race, push each other. Then you also need the third one who's younger, knows the technology, and keep you up to speed. I've always
what's
that.
about that now is because things are changing so quickly, almost nobody's been there and almost nobody's done that. Like, you have become a person who's been there, done that now.
Yeah, all right. I know.
And you've been in business for much less time than me. And I'm buying your book and I'm learning from your experience, because I'm applying that principle. And so I agree. But isn't it interesting who the been there and done that's are now? It's not necessarily these legacy companies.
Agreed. Yeah, and like with the podcast, again, the podcast just started for fun. I kind of chose on the call, but it's given me so many opportunities to meet so many people across the country, across other countries. It's been pretty cool. But I've met a lot of young, savvy, technical people too. So it's really, really helped to have benefited me for sure. Like Danny's one of them in the book, and Matt Rogers another one. There's like people that are just really, really, really good with AI stuff and what's coming down the pipeline, are really heavily involved. And my mentor Jonathan is close to robots. He's on the board for a couple of big robotic companies. So I have a really close network who's highly in touch with that stuff. So it's cool. I was at a conference 2 years ago with at Patrick by David, and it was at the after party. I was talking with a guy from Ford. He was over the development of robotics or something for Ford. He told me that day, he's like, Jonas, I promise you right now, in our factory, we have robots that can do your job. Your job now is just to be up to date and up to speed and be ready for these things to launch, because they're going to be doing your job soon. And I don't know what that looks like. None of us do, but we always thought that the home service would be the first industry that they take over. It ends up being one of the last.
Agreed. Yeah, I think we've got probably 10 years, 5 to 10, where we will be operating as under the current labor structure we have. But 5 to 10 years from now, whether it's drones, robots, even if it's just, our drivers don't drive anymore, right? They're all self-driving vehicles. And maybe we can finally get some relief from these outrageous insurance premiums we're all paying, because they're safer. But, we're going to see technology with the emergence of AI, with the emergence of robotics, And the combination of the two, it's just going to be the robotic revolution, like we had the industrial revolution. And I wouldn't be surprised if at the end, the other side of this, the common work week is 20 hours. You'll only need to work 20 hours in order to earn what you need to, because the labor advantage that is brought about from robotics, I think it's going to change the world economy. Right now, we have factories that are built elsewhere because there's a labor advantage. But once that robotic labor advantage happens here, then the domestic industrial advantage becomes an American one. And it's going to move fast.
It'll be interesting because let's just stick with even just lawn care with like the robots for lawn care, like the lawnmowers. They've been working on that technology for 20 years roughly, and it's still not quite there yet. It's moving a lot faster, especially with AI. So you're right. It's probably 5 to 10 years out. Then at that point, it's hard to say what it's going to look like. Like, are we all just going to get paid to sit home? Like, who knows? I have no idea what it's going to look like.
Well, you imagine like an apartment complex that has to hire a landscaper right now, You buy your robotic lawnmowers like your Roomba.
Yeah, same thing.
Never leave the property, right?
Yeah. I think they just released the first robot ever that you don't have to have a person there watching it. Because up until now, they've had a bunch of mowers that you just send them out, but you have to have someone there watching it. Now I think they've just released the first one. I saw it 3 months ago that you don't have to have someone there. But then again, it's like, okay, now the government's going to come in, regulate the robots. Like, how fast are people going to adapt to them? Are they going to go buy their own? Like, who knows?
Well, what will really cause the revolution is when the robots are able to make the robots. That's when it's going to really accelerate. Right now, we're making them and we're figuring out how they can succeed. You're starting to see them in the farms with the robotic weeding and things like that.
Those are cool. Yeah, those are really cool.
And they're doing jobs, that are difficult for us to do and costly. And as long as we can provide the energy that they're needed and the rare earth materials are there to make the batteries, and it looks like those problems are both being solved.
Nuclear plants. Yeah, sounds like they're doubling down on nuclear plants in the U.S., even small ones.
I just see the technology will not decelerate. I think if anything, it might accelerate.
I agree. I think that Elon just said on Rogan's podcast 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, that his newest Tesla, well, he didn't say it has wings, but he did kind of mention that it's going to fly of some sort. So it'll be interesting. He said it's going to be the biggest, I don't know how you worded it, like the biggest release of a vehicle ever in history, or anything, not just a vehicle, but anything in history. It'll be the biggest advancement ever.
Yeah, I think too that it can't be understated how deeply this is going to affect our society. If you think about education, right? K through 12. Why did we go to school? Primarily to prepare us for employment and to give us information, that we needed. Well, all the information you ever needed is now in your phone. What purpose is education really going to serve?
Because now at the touch of their fingers, they have every answer that is smarter than the person that they're learning from.
Exactly.
So now they can fact check the professor and be like, "No, you're wrong, man."
Right. Exactly. And so that's gonna catch up with us as a society and how we're structured and what are we doing with our time? How are we spending that? We're going to have providence and resources like never before. I don't expect we'll have homelessness like we have it now, or hunger. It's just not going to be that difficult. Elon was talking about the robot surgeons that will be able to do surgery, at 1/10.
And they're already using it,
and they're better at it.
And so, even with diagnosing like pictures, like they'll scan a picture, and they said that, I can't remember what it was. It was some sort of doctor of some sort. They thought there was going to be less doctors, because of AI. And there's actually, because there was like 33,000 of these specific specialty doctors. Now there's like, and then since this AI came out, they need more doctors to read and actually do the work. But there's like actually more doctors now, like 50,000 of these specialty doctors. So it's funny. But the robot itself is better at doing the actual surgery, and it's actually better at reading and diagnosing the picture.
Yeah. So for us, as business owners, when you're thinking about the challenge of getting through an 8-hour workday with an imperfect human, and then you realize, you might be employing a robot that doesn't need workers' comp, that doesn't need a meal break, that can work 24 hours a day if you have the clientele to send them to, so to speak. It really is shocking at what the future is going to portend, and it's probably within my lifetime, definitely within your lifetime.
Yeah, and to think of like just of all the people that you have in staff, right? Like entomologists, you're not going to need that. It's going to be so smart. It's going to scan it while it's doing it. It's going to know exactly what it is. Going to know how to solve the problem. Who knows? But it's interesting take to think about. What it's going to do to the industry. So that's why I was like, how many more years do you got left? I'm like, this was my plan. I said I was going to go on a 20-year run. But who knows? Like, I don't know what the next 5 years looks like, let alone 20.
Yeah, I think the message for our industry and owners in our industry is watch this. Pay attention to this. Don't get run over by it. Run with it.
You have to be, like you said, you have to be willing to adapt and pay attention. And so, like, listening to the podcast, having these conversations, people who are in the industry that are close to the people who are launching this stuff, it's going to be interesting.
And as we get older, generationally, the enemy is your unwillingness to innovate. You want to just do what you've always done, and the days of that are gone.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that. I was talking with a company doing $5 million in revenue, and they don't even have a CRM.
Wow,
it's impressive.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like, oh man, like those days are just long gone. Like, obviously there was a reason that they're talking to me, bringing me in, but it's like there's so much you guys leave on the table, But again, that's just like they're stuck in their same ways, been doing it the same way for 30 years, like you said, and unwilling to change. But then they're stuck.
But I do want to touch on one thing that I think is really it's all us. It's going to be left for us, the human side of us, the owners, and that's leadership. Recognizing talent, organizing talent, motivating talent. Those things are, people are not going to follow the robot down the road. They're going to follow you because you inspire them, and you help and you organize them in a way where they can be effective and feel effective and look effective. And so, you're touching on networking, I think is absolutely critical. Whatever a measure of success I've been able to achieve, most of it's been because I've been willing to network and just talk to everybody and be friendly. And the network is an exchange. You shouldn't hold your business secrets in and just say, oh, that gives me advantage over my competitors. I have found you gain way more than you give when you share. And that's why your book is so remarkable. As soon as I opened it up, I started going through and I thought, my goodness, does the industry know what he's just given them? Because of technology, your book is aging as we speak, but to me, it is the most current iteration. It's the most current guidebook that you could have to really elevate your business and bring it up. And you could pick any chapter you want and work on them one at a time. And if you did one per month over the year, you'd transform your business probably, let alone at the very least improve it. And I know I had an improvement within the first 10 minutes. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your dad in a second, but I happened to turn to the back of the book and looked at your strategy for referrals. And we had never found something that I had felt good and worked. And within 10 minutes of reading that, we were setting an appointment and we're up and going. We're moving. And so you've already improved my business with just those couple of pages, and we've barely been able to get into the rest of it. I've got 4 people here that each have their own copy of your book, and they're each assigned different sections because they specialize in those areas, whether it's SEO or social media, branding or whatnot. And I'm going to be interacting with them over the next couple of months on what have they learned, what do we need to do, how can we improve. And so I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to write the book. You've got one big fan. I don't know how many others you'll get.
I know I have over 500, so that's good.
Hey, well, good. They're smart people, because you guys have just done a tremendous job putting this together. And it falls right in line with that philosophy kind of networking. It's now connected you and I, and, I think I'll be recommending it to as many folks as I can. If you haven't got a copy of Zip Code King, you should order it today. And then I really, really, really appreciated the remarks you made about your father. It could be that I lost my father in August this year. And so when that happens, you tend to really reflect on, what your parents have given you. And, when I read what you wrote about him, it kind of, I felt like I was almost right there, alongside the bike and the horse and the man for a minute. And because something lights the fire, right, in you. Something, I don't know. You never know what it might be, a father, a mother, a moment, a mentor, or something like that. But it's pretty special that you had it with your dad. And I think that's neat. My father was a chemistry professor and an introvert. And he was mystified by me because I was a fun-loving extrovert kid. And he never understood how I could just walk into a room of people and not feel, shy or weird. And I look back at his legacy of service and the name that he gave for me. And the 2 gentlemen that started this business were my business fathers. They tempered me in all of my excitement, and they taught me about being solid in my commitments and in my word when I gave it to people, always coming through for your customers, protecting the business, so that it would be there for everybody and making those tough decisions. But, we stand on the shoulders of some pretty special people. And it sounds like the shoulders of your father are ones that you stood on.
Yeah, he's one of the best. And I got super lucky to enjoy the years that I got with him. Obviously, he was killed tragically on our opening day of hunting season. And thankfully, I had bought a house just to flip. And he had just moved back here, and we worked on the house together for a month straight, like every single day. So I got to spend a lot of time with him before it happened. So it was like meant to be. One of my employees at the time was losing his house to the bank. I felt bad, of course, and then I didn't want him, to lose his house. And obviously, it was like, okay, well, there's a little bit of a way for me to make a little bit of money. So I ended up paying cash for the day before it went to foreclosure. But then it just worked out. Like, I didn't really want to buy it, but then I kind of wanted to buy it. And then I got into the house and it needs some work. I'm like, oh man, I really don't want to do this. And then my dad's like, oh, I'll help you. And then for a month straight, every single day, we got to hang out together and work on the house. So we spent a lot of time together before it happened, which was like meant to be. And he was like the nicest, most caring dad, father, grandfather you could ever imagine. Although he's a super hard worker, up at 4 a.m., 3 a.m., didn't sleep, went out, worked on the farm before he went to work. And he worked from 7 to 3. Then after work, he'd go shoe horses because he was a farrier on the off season or off, as a part-time job. Or he would just go help with friends. He would just go help them split wood or just go help them just do whatever. Like he was always helping people. And then, he worked hard. He raced horses for a living. And he won the national championships in like 91, I think, 1991. So that was cool. I get to watch him. I remember like the news coming out there with all their video camera. And like I said, I remember the picture. I still have it on the wall, like the picture that they took. And I used to ride my bike next to him. Like I watched him work hard too. And then, so he earned everything that he had. But just like the few things that I could take away, he's just like ultra competitive. Always showed up when he said he was going to. Great father, like never missed anything. Like I was in sports my entire life. My kid's been in sports their entire life. And if they had something going on and he lived 6 hours away, he'd drive home for it. That's just who he was. And so if I could just be half the man that he ever was, I'll be in a good spot. And so I cherish every day that I had with him. I miss every day. I think about him every single day. Weirdest thing ever. Just never happened to me, and I'm open about everything. I had a dream about him maybe like 2 months ago. It was like a happy dream. Like I got to see my dad and like a real conversation. And I remember waking up and I had tears rolling down my eyes. Like, and I was sleeping. It had never happened before. So, he's just a really, really good guy. And I remember the day of his funeral. And I just sat down, I wrote my goals, and I promised my dad that I was just going to go on this mission. And I was already fired up before that. And this put a whole new fuel to the fire. That's when the podcast started. And that's why I wrote the book. Part of the reason why I wrote the book, it's just to keep pushing. I said, I promised them that everyone remember our last name. And I just want as many people and leave the biggest impact that I have on this earth before I leave on every single person that's out there. So if I can help anyone, like I said, to help you with a chapter, like anyone that I can help lift, that's what I did it for. Is just to get my name out there so everyone remembers his legacy.
I learned once that most of our kids know we love them, but they're not so sure if we're proud of them. And so the counsel was, make sure they know now and then that you're proud of them. And I thought, oh my goodness, when your parents say, love you, you're like, yeah, I love you too, but when your dad or your mom say, hey, I'm proud of you, oh my goodness, it kind of fills you from head to toe. You know what I mean? And we want that. It's really meaningful to us. And, my dad he's not going to be able to see any of the other things that I've accomplished or will accomplish the remainder of my life. And they're real big motivators, that for me, you can tell it struck a chord that, you made some promises to your father and to yourself about that because you're so grateful for the legacy and the opportunity, that they've given you. I was able to care for my dad the last 5 years of his life. And there's a lot of work in that. But, at the end of the day, I look back and, I'm really proud of that. And it's also taught me that that's something we can give our employees, when they do well. Probably don't want to be telling them you love them too much, There might be some lawsuits in there.
Yeah.
But, when they do something well and you let them know that you're proud of them, we don't get that from a lot of places in our life. And we're in a unique position to give that to our employees. And I know now over the last couple of years, as I've started finding the right situation where I can point out something specific, hey, you really went in there and handled that super well. I'm just really proud that you're working for us. I'm really proud that you are wearing our brand and working here. And I want to thank you for that. It's something that means a lot to them. I know it means a lot to us, and we don't always kind of have places to get that anymore. And so I really appreciated your comments there on your book. And since I'm just a little bit older, I can say I'm sure he is very proud of what you're doing, but also, how you're doing it and what you're going to continue to do. I'm not sure how life's going to change for our industry and our businesses, right? But we can carry forward all those lessons we've learned from them, and they're kind of they're sacred to us, right? The work ethic is super sacred to me. When I was raising my kids, I was kind of clumsy, but I always said there's no fun till the work is done. And when my son graduated from Marine boot camp, that's the tattoo he got.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And he just wanted to honor his dad. He's now a staff sergeant in the Marines, MAGTF planner. And he and his wife just got shipped to Korea for 2 years last month. So we won't see them for a little while unless we get out there to visit them. But, that work ethic is something, I know my son will always kind of carry forward. And I can see that that your father is always he's always there. He's always present. And I thought that was really cool. So I appreciate you putting that there in the forward of your book.
Yeah, he had this crazy whistle. Like, it's so loud, like the loudest whistle. He had to use his fingers to just whistle. And I would just walk into like a gymnasium or something and just hear that whistle. And I would just know where my dad was at all the time. It's pretty cool. So we just have that, just a cool thing that we always had together. It wasn't all my other siblings. It was just him and I. Like the super loud whistle, I knew where he's at and I just go find him. It was pretty cool. And then what he said about like letting your kids know you're proud of them. My oldest daughter wrestles and she's a beast. She's ranked 5th in the state. She's a sophomore. It's fun. But every time she goes on the mat, I said, no matter what happens, I'm proud of you. So it makes sure that they hear it a lot, It means a lot.
It does. It does.
I think one of the best compliments that I get is like when my dad's friends come around and they'll hear like stories from him and they'll just be like, you look just like your dad. Or like you have the same mannerisms as your dad. Or like, your dad used to tell me that, he's always worried about his kids, make sure they're taken care of. He's like, but he's never worried about you. He always knew that you were locked in and you already had it figured out. That's always cool to hear that stuff,
Yeah. And, for a lot of the owners that are out there, one of the things that I've kind of had on my mind is like our metrics for success, right? Of course, our KPIs, we can sit here and get as wonky as you want with KPIs, metrics, your P&Ls, balance sheets, multiples, EBITDA, all that other stuff. But being a successful owner is not based on those metrics. It's based on the impact, the influence that you have on the people around you. And I hope all the owners that are out there that are kind of looking to improve and get better. I hope they keep that drive and that ambition. But I also hope that they feel proud. They should never feel ashamed if their business is 1 million or 2 or this or that. You don't have any idea of the impact you made on people and humanity and history. And, I hope they're all proud of fulfilling that role, because it's a really tough role. Being an owner is for a very, very small percentage of people. And no matter what your metrics are, if you've done that, you do have something you should really be proud of.
Yeah, and we all have to start somewhere. You know what I mean? We just do. And then the more that you learn, the more you put yourself out there, you're around people like yourself, you learn, and you take that stuff that you learn and you execute. It just takes time. Like you said, Jimmy, you've been doing this for 30 years. And people want success over a year because they see it on social media. That's just not real life. Just not.
No, you can't make the crops grow faster. You can plant the seed, right? But they grow at their own rate,
And it's one customer at a time.
Yeah. Or 5 if you can.
Or 5 if you can. But it's just like, but people is like, oh, I just want to go faster. And we all do. You want to go faster. I want to go faster. We all want to go faster. But I think people just expect, that they're going to go way faster than what they can. But they also like underestimate how much you could actually pull off in 5 years.
Absolutely. I mean, one of my other favorite books that I have is this one, Traction.
I've read that book probably 10 times. In all my books, that I have 5 favorite books. That's 1 or 2 right now of all time ever.
And this great little checkup that it makes you do, in Traction, where you evaluate your business. I mean, I cannot believe this, but I found that last year, 33 years. And I finally found it. And it was like an illumination, it turned on so many lights, and it brought so much focus to our processes and our systems and working on the business and pulling those things together. I cannot recommend strong enough for folks, network with good people and read good books. Your book is fantastic, and Traction's fantastic.
I love Traction. And we learned EOS probably like 8 years, 8 years ago. My mentor brought us out to Park City, Utah, and brought in a person from EOS, an implementer, and taught us all Traction out there. Like I said, 8 years ago, there wasn't any like real implementers around at that time. There wasn't like Zoom, we had nothing. So we had to self-implement, but we've been doing it ever since. And so we run our EOS meetings every single Wednesday, 11 o'clock. And then we do like mini EOS meetings every single Thursday. It's a lot of meetings, but they're just like mini short ones, but I like it a lot.
So one of my irrational prejudices is I can't stand corporate jargon, KPI, all the stuff. We're going to do a team this and that. And so I've always hated the word meeting. Let's have another meeting. And so
You ever read the book Death by Meetings? That's kind of how I feel sometimes, but that we kind of altered it too,
So when we got the senior management together, their first assignment was to come up with another name than our meeting, our EOS meeting, And the youngest member said, "Why don't we call it a rally?" And I'm like, man, I love that. So now we have a Wednesday rally. And excuse me. And so we rally twice a month, because once a week is just too much, but twice a month. And one of those rallies is a KPI rally. And one has nothing to do with numbers, and one has everything to do with numbers. So I found that you can do your version of EOS is what I'm trying to say to people.
I agree.
You don't have to convert over to some, system and follow it perfectly orthodox. There's just great principles and ideas that people have figured out that will serve you wonderfully. If you study them and look and learn them, you'll be a much better version of yourself, but still be yourself, right?
1,000%. We actually only have like 10 to 15 minutes left. So I'm going to change subject a little bit because I have some questions I want to ask about California, especially like all the regulations that have recently come out in like 5 to 10 years around pest control. How's that been out there?
Challenging. Probably the most infamous one has been the ban on second-gen rodenticides.
That's where I was going.
Yeah. Well, I, as the chair of our legislative committee, I've been in that fight since 2014. And there were bills for 4 years that we just defeated before the first ban actually passed. And it's been a long road, but it's possible now that ban might be changed and modified. The Department of Pesticide Regulation has been doing a reevaluation of second-gen rodenticides. And in September, they announced their intention to maybe allow them to be used in California under some potential different guidelines. They opened that up for public comment. And I've spent the last few years also trying to connect closer with the environmental community that has concerns about this. And so when DPR put this out that they were going to take another look at this, I reached out to the Center for Biological Diversity, and I asked if we could have some direct talks between them and industry and see if we could find what was common ground. And, maybe there's some areas where we worked on instead of having disagreement. So we had 5 meetings together. It was really fantastic. And we just took them kind of issue by issue. And I think we were able to see that they were able to see that we wanted to be stewards of public health and the environment. We're not trying to do one at the expense of the other. And some studies have recently come out that have shown that the ban on the use for those for structural pest control has not led to a change in the presence of them in wildlife. So we are now going to have a joint meeting and present our findings to DPR. It's kind of not part of their formal process, but I do think over the next 4 to 5 months that DPR is going to come out with a completed reevaluation that will probably reintroduce the use of second gens in California for structural pest control on a limited basis.
So what is the other side's take? Like, where are they coming from?
Well, it's really sort of an awful thing when you see the wildlife. So we'll go out and we'll use them in effective rodent control, but sometimes the rodents will leave and they'll be consumed by a predator, whether it's a coyote, an owl, or some other kind of predator. And all of a sudden you're getting a non-target species, and boy, it just is not good for the wildlife. It's bad news. And so, when you see the wildlife that's affected, it's kind of heartbreaking to see the photos, and it really pulls on your heartstrings. Look, do we really need to use this stuff if it's getting into the wildlife? And so what we've really learned is that it's probably not much of it is happening through structural, because essentially for the last 3 years, that's been turned off in California. But we have non-professional use that still happens. And those are everything from illegal marijuana grows to legal and permitted use through agriculture, where there's still some issues there. And conversely, we've seen the commensal rodent population in California dramatically increase, like through the roof.
Right, I've heard. That's why I was asking how you guys have been handling it.
Yeah, and so what that has meant is we've got far more rodents in the state. They vector more disease. They cause more damage. And so it's out of balance. And our ability to protect public health has been mitigated by this. So we're hoping to have those return to structural pest control so that we can bring things more into balance with public health, and then take a harder look at where these rodenticides are still being used and mitigating their impact on wildlife through some of the other areas where they haven't had mitigations. But in the city, in the urban areas, where we've lost them, all we've seen pretty much is an increase in the commensal rodent populations.
Yeah, because everyone, on some of my most viral videos on TikTok or YouTube, it's all about prey, right? Like secondary poison against prey, and I get it. And it's like, okay, well, of course, we're trying to be stewards of the environment, like you said. The other side of the coin is now look at the influx of rodents, like you said, that you can't get control of. So now what, So, and then if this happens in California, that's just kind of where it starts. Then it trickles through, they kind of lead everything, and it kind of just trickles to the other states.
And one thing we really haven't, we're very fortunate. We're very lucky. We haven't been burned by rodents as a vector for a disease, because that's when the human population really gets damaged.
Well, who was that famous person who was just killed by rodents? Who was that?
Well, there was the actor.
Yeah. His wife,
Gene
right? Yeah, Gene Hackman's wife. Yeah.
Hantavirus. And so it can, vector diseases. And we've been fortunate. It's not been like the plague where it was before, but we're just fortunate for that. It's essentially, a vectoring highway for diseases, because commensal rodent by definition is one that lives among people. So our role as protectors of public health is critical and strong. And, we need to be really careful about letting the rodent populations get out of hand. If that kind of combines with some other disease event that, like COVID, comes upon us once in a century, rodent control is going to be more than just an annoyance or, a health factor. It'll be survival.
Do you guys have these conversations when you're talking to their side like this?
Yeah, I think that's what I will say. We're starting to see people really are understanding that we don't want to live alongside the rodents. They're just too dangerous for that. The problem is, that kind of competes with a bobcat that's bleeding out of its eyes or a mountain lion, and so we're asking people to make decisions. It's pretty hard to vote for rodenticides when you see a bobcat or a mountain lion that's that deeply affected. I don't like it, and I hate seeing it.
I don't think anyone would.
Yeah. So I think what's happening now is we're starting to find a better balance and an awareness. And quite frankly, we're the best stewards of that product. The licensed, trained individual is going to take better care of that product than your homeowner and your non-licensed user, because we're aware of what's going on, and we can deploy the bait and take it back on a more responsive basis based on information. So
was it a restricted use pesticide before it got banned in California?
Yeah.
It was?
Yeah,
Okay.
It started out as an RUP or an RMS, and then the next step was just a complete ban of it along the lines of the structural industry. So
you're saying that it's not really because they've seen no reduction on the wildlife side. So therefore, you're saying that it's not coming from structural pest control; it's coming from ag or somewhere else.
Well, you've got to be a little bit careful because it can persist in tissue and environments for quite some time. But we're on our third year, so there should be some measurable difference, and they're just not seeing that. The data is not showing that, and so at the very least, it's a strong indication that there are additional sources. And we made that argument for a long time. You look at the wildlife areas; they're most proximate to agriculture, not the urban areas, right? And so while there's not a lot of quantity of use in second gens in agriculture, there still is use. And so those are more proximate and then therefore more likely to be a contributing factor. The illegal use certainly is. Anytime you go to these illegal marijuana farms in California, you'll see it is the rodenticides are used with impunity. There are certain species. I think of the fishers, if I've got that right. I might not have it right, but they're only affected around the marijuana grows because they're only in the forest. There is no agriculture or structure around them, and so the rodents chew on the plants and on the irrigation, and so they just get out there with pellets and grind it out, and the forest floor is blue with diphacinone, and they don't care. They could care less what they kill. And so it's how do you regulate that? Who's going to go in and write them a citation? Shoot, the forestry people don't want to go in just because they'll get shot. So it's important to note that because you want to solve the problem, and it's a false solution if you do all these structural restrictions and the problem's really out there in the forests, right? We haven't actually protected any wildlife. Yeah, we've reduced this product in urban areas, but the wildlife's still being affected. And so that's, it's some of the things that we're trying to talk about targeting. How is this sold? In what quantities is it sold? Can we reduce that amount, and make it more difficult to misuse? And I think that's where the solution is going to be. Otherwise, we're getting to the point where in places like Los Angeles and San Francisco, you got the daytime rats running around already. They're out there in the daytime. They don't even care anymore.
So what are you guys doing to control them now? Like, what can they do other than just trap?
Well, trapping and exclusion. You got to try to keep them out. It's very difficult. Trapping is labor intensive. Exclusion is construction intensive, which means you're either paying for a lot of materials or a lot of time, which means people on the low income are suffering the most. You can get a multi-housing unit that was built in the 60s, and to really have effective rodent control, you need to do $30,000 worth of exclusion. They're not going to pay that bill. So what are they going to do? They're going to set out some traps, and their tenants are going to live with rodents. They're going to live with the asthma effect that comes with the droppings. They're going to live with everything else. And, whereas if you had the opportunity to bait, you could have some control there. And there are some bait alternatives. The problems arise in the fact that they're not as palatable, and there's no antidote, and so
it's like first gen, right?
Yeah, not first or second. There's no antidote with these. They're acutes. Gotcha. And so, something else gets a hold of this,
like an animal or your pet.
Yeah, you don't have an antidote, which you used to have that, So you have to be really, really careful about your baiting choices and exposure, and just what you want to get involved with. For us here at Neighborly, trapping and exclusion are pretty much all that we do now. We don't even call them bait stations anymore. We call them rodent stations. And so my hope is that as technology becomes more powerful in rodent stations, we'll be able to use that information to see how rodents are gaining access, to see what they're feeding on, and we'll be able to use technology to make a bigger difference in how we've deployed baits in the past, more effective, reduce the amount we're using and reduce the amount of time they're out.
Yeah, it's like, because the first spot that I went to is like, okay, how does a bobcat or a mountain lion get into urban areas?
Well, in California, a lot of the communities we built spread into those areas. It's like California's environment is treasured. People love living in Tahoe in the mountains. They love the mountains surrounding the LA area. And they love the coastal mountains as well. And so while the farms are more proximate to a lot of the wildlife areas, there's still a lot of urban areas that are built into the wildlife areas. We've got a community here where my wife and I just bought a little piece of property, and they're going to build a home on it for us. And while we were out there last week, standing on the property, a coyote 100 feet just ran right by us. And so in their ecosystem, rodents are in the food chain, and that's what they do, and that's what they eat. So we need to be as careful about non-target species as we can be.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I know we're running out of time here. You got a hard stop. We got to be out for 10 minutes. Should we just wrap this up now and do part 2 tomorrow? What do you want to do?
Yeah, well, I think we'll wrap this one up and set up another one as soon as it works for you.
Cool. Man, it's been fun already. It went by so fast.
It did. And I really appreciate it. All of it, actually. And I look forward to chatting again.
Yeah, we'll set up part 2. But Jim, appreciate you being here. We haven't even got to like your goals, what they're going to be over the next 5 years. Like I want to hear what you guys are up to out there. I want to see where you guys are headed. Like there's a lot more to talk about. But for now, good chatting with you, and we'll talk at you soon.
Sounds great. Appreciate the opportunity and your book.
I appreciate you too. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to another episode of Pest Control Millionaire. We don't charge any money for the show, but the podcast isn't free. Please like and subscribe and give us a 5-star review in your favorite podcast app. This makes a huge difference for us. If you have any specific questions about your business or your personal life that you'd like answered by me or any of my podcast guests, please send an email to info@pestcontrolmillionaire.com. And if you want to get in touch with me about our marketing class, we do a live version every Thursday night. Check out our website at pestcontrolmillionaires.com. Thank you guys for listening. I'll see you guys in the next one.